Hi, my name is James Montgomery. Here's my name in today's date. You can see that well. Here's a few little notes I have for the presentation. I had it down pretty well, so I don't really need to do much, hopefully. So, to start out, I'm going to be identifying the main components of the skeletal system, which is predominantly going to be the axial and the appendicular. So, axial skeleton, if you'll see on this guy here, you got it's going to be the skull, the vertebral column, and the thoracic cage. Appendicular skeleton, pretty much everything else. Um, that would so arms, legs, pelvic girdle. The girdles are what attach everything to the axial skeleton. In the bones, you have a few types of cells that are of importance. I mean, obviously they're all of importance, but three main types of cells. You have osteocytes, which are the mature bone cells. You have osteoclasts, which are bone cells or cells in the bone that are breaking down old bone, usually for the purposes of remodeling. And then you have osteoblasts, which are the cells that are creating new bone cells. And within the bone, you have spongy bone, which has these structures called trabeculae, which are like little arches, and then you have compact bone, which is more dense and exactly what it sounds like. Very dense, very dense, used for protection. Bones of the skull and the shafts of long bones are more compact. Um, so bone classifications, you have sutural, which are little weird flat skull bones that form in between sutures. You have pneumatized bones, which are pneumatized like pneumatic air. So they're bones that are filled with a bunch of little air pockets, such as the ethmoid. You have short bones, which are little box-like bones that pretty much the prime type of those is like in the carpals. Those are little boxy bones. You have irregular bones, which are exactly what they sound. They don't really fall into a good defined category easily. And these are bones like the vertebrae. Um, that usually have a lot of weird ridges. Flat bones, which are what they sound like, very thin, compact bones. These are like the bones of the skull. Then you have long bones, which is when everyone thinks of a bone, that's what they think of. These are bones like your humerus or your femur, very long, like it sounds like. Usually have an epiphysis, like the tips, a metaphysis, and then the diaphysis, which is the shaft. Um, and then the last type, you have sesamoid bones, which are bones that grow within tendons at joints and such. And the one that everyone has is the patella, which is the kneecap. So I'm going to go over the bones of the body now. And so we have the, you know, hands on the touchpad. You have the frontal. Back, you have the occipital. And then on the sides, you have, don't touch it. You have the temporal. And then behind the eyes, you can kind of see it. It's going to be really hard to see on the webcam, obviously. But the sphenoid is back there. And the other cranial bone is the ethmoid, but it's very, very hard to see on this model. In fact, I don't even know if they included it. So, um, now I'm going to go over the rest of the bones of the body. So I'll start with the axial skeleton. We can go with a few facial bones. I didn't say to mention the facial bones, but you have the zygomatic, the mandible, and the maxilla. Nasal bone right there. Um, then you move down to the vertebrae. You have 7 cervical vertebrae, the first 2 of which, number 1 is the atlas because it supports the world, the head, and then axis is what it pivots on. The next 5 are just regular cervical vertebrae, C3 through C5. Then you have 12 thoracic vertebrae because you have 12 pairs of ribs, followed by 5 lumbar vertebrae, which hold most of the weight of the skeleton, which is why when people have back issues, it's often lumbar. Then you have the sacrum down here, which is a bunch of fused vertebrae, along with the coccyx, which is also a bunch of fused vertebrae. So then you have ribs. You got 7 true ribs because they're attached directly to the sternum. 3 false ribs below them, which are attached to the sternum only through cartilage. And then you have 2 pairs of floating ribs down here, and they don't attach to anything. Sternum, the thing at the center of the rib cage. You have 3 parts. It has the manubrium up the top. Manubrium means shield, I think, because it kind of looks like a little shield. The body of it, which is the main part, and then the xiphoid process, which is this little tip at the bottom. So moving away from the axial skeleton, we'll go to the appendicular. You have up here, you got the clavicle, most commonly broken bone in the body, I believe, and the scapula, which is another example of a flat bone. Then in the arm, you have the humerus, radius, and ulna. Radius on the thumb side, you can't see that well. And then you have the carpals, 8 of them, and you have, it's going to be really hard for you to see them, but I'll just name them off in like clockwise direction, starting at the bottom one. You have the scaphoid, lunate, triquetral pisiform, hamate, capitate, trapezium, trapezoid. Trapezoid, trapezium. Always get those two confused. And then after that, you have the metacarpals, which are right here. And then each metacarpal attaches to a phalanx on each finger. And so the thumb has two of them, two phalanges, and then the rest of the fingers each have three phalanges. Move down to the pelvic girdle. You got the ilium up here, ischium down here, and then the pubis right here. And that's the pubic symphysis in the middle that you probably can't see that well. Then moving down, you got the femur right here, the tibia in the front, fibula in the back, and then moving down to the foot, lay this guy down. You have the talus, which is the ankle bone, the calcaneus, which is the heel bone. You got the navicular in front of that. I don't know if you can see it that way, navicular. And then you have three cuneiforms, the medial, intermediate, and lateral, and then the cuboid on the outside. And then you have your metatarsals right here. And those are your tarsals, by the way. I feel like I should mention that they are part of that group. And then you have the phalanges, which is the same deal as the finger phalanges. The big toe has two, the rest of them have three. And in case you want to know specifically, you have the proximal, middle, and distal phalanges. Okay, so that is all. Oh, also the patella. My bad. Patella, right there. That's one bone. So let me think. I believe that's all the bones now. But now I'm going to get into a clinical application of the anatomy of the skeletal system, which is important in a future career. Which is for me, I want to be an orthopedic surgeon. I've shadowed a few orthopedic surgeons. I've had injuries and like dealt with that. It's probably my favorite part of the body to study. So like things like broken bones and like the way that bones remodel, that's an obvious clinical application. Like the way that doctors need to know how to set a bone when surgeries are required. Like talking to one of the orthopedic surgeons I shadowed, he was talking about clavicle injuries and how this guy came in with a very dislocated, broken clavicle, and how he said if it's dislocated past a certain point, you're going to need to have surgery to re-break it and fix it because otherwise it'll literally shorten that side of the body and it makes it asymmetrical and it's not good for the body. Things like that, and just like dealing with regular broken bones, setting them for 6 weeks, having them heal. I think that's very interesting stuff, and it's something I want to be a part of as a doctor in the future. So, anyways, that's my presentation. Thank you.